So this is a letter that was sent, and I'll just read it.
Yeah.
It says, I was hiking, and while in the woods yesterday, I asked, what is all of this? The stream, the woods, etc. I felt an immediate answer, it's beauty. I replied, I don't want this beauty. I want the beauty that people who have had near-death experiences talk about, feeling that total love, all-knowing beauty beyond anything I've ever experienced. That's what I want. And immediately I felt the response, you're already there. This puzzled me. In one sense, the ego mind seeing all of this as illusion, and in another sense, it has no connection to ajata, or does it? If I turn inward, I am merged in that beauty, in a sense. Is the answer you're already there accurate? So that was the question that was asked.
Firstly, about the experience that people who have near-death experiences, the beauty that they experience, the love and whatever, whatever appears and disappears is not real. So any experience that comes to us newly is not a real experience. What is real must ever exist and ever shine. So anything else is just an appearance. It's not. It has no substantial. It's got no existence of its own. It just appears in the view of the ego that perceives it. But the real beauty, the beauty that we actually are, that is our real nature. What we actually are is infinite beauty. We are already there. We are always there. We are never separated from that. But when we rise as ego, we seem to be separate from that. That is, as ego, we limit ourselves to the extent of a body. Extent means the extent in time and the extent in space. So as this limited body, we cannot experience the infinite happiness or infinite beauty that we actually are. So, but when we investigate ourselves, that is when the nature of ego is to always attend to things other than itself. Only so long as we're attending to things other than ourselves, does ego have a semi-existence, and do all other things have semi-existence? So in order to experience ourselves as we actually are, that is, as ego, there are two defining characteristics of ego. Firstly, as ego, we're always aware of ourselves as I am this body. And secondly, we are consequently aware of other things. That is, it's only when we experience ourselves as a form that we are aware of other forms, as Bhagavan says in verse 4 of Ulidunapadu. So our very rising as ego imposes limitations on us, the limitations of form. We are one form and there are other forms. So it seems. Therefore, when ego turns its attention back towards itself, to the extent to which we as ego attend to ourselves, we are thereby withdrawing our attention from all other things. When we attend to ourselves so keenly that we cease to be aware of anything else whatsoever, that is the state of pure awareness. And as soon as ego experiences that state, it ceases to be ego and remains as pure awareness. Because what knows pure awareness is only pure awareness. Ego can never know pure awareness because ego is an adjunct mixed awareness. That is, as ego, we're not just, we are aware I am, but we're not aware just I am. We're aware I am so-and-so, I am this person, I am this body. So when we experience ourselves as we actually are, that is as the pure awareness that we actually are, we will then recognize that we are infinite happiness, infinite beauty, infinite love, whatever we want to call it. That though from the perspective of ego, that may seem to be a new experience because ego doesn't experience that now. But what we actually are is always aware of itself as it actually is. So, in other words, we say it because that when we try to put it into language, language confuses it. That is what we, as we actually are, we are always aware of ourselves as we actually are, which is infinite awareness, Satchitananda, happiness, love, beauty, whatever we want to call it. That is our eternal experience. That is seemingly covered by our rising as ego, but it's covered only in the view of ourself as ego. And when we investigate it, we find there's no such thing as ego at all. So that is the state of ajata. We then recognize that nothing has ever happened. No change has ever taken place. Nothing has appeared or disappeared. What is alone is as it always is, without the slightest, undergoing even the slightest change.
Okay. The next question that
this is understanding this clearly is very important for the practice, because that is, we need to clearly understand why attending to anything other than ourself cannot be a means to eradicate ego, because the nature of ego is to attend to other things. So as long as we're attending to anything other than ourselves, we are thereby nourishing and sustaining ego. Other spiritual paths may be beneficial to the extent that they help to purify the mind. They can free the mind from its, they can weaken the mind, they can weaken our Vishaya vasanas, our inclination to go out towards other things, but only to a certain extent. But in order to finish the job, we have to come to this path of self-investigation, because this self-investigation simply means attending to ourself and ourself alone, nothing other than ourself. Only when we are so keenly self-attentive that we cease to be aware of anything else is ego thereby eradicated, and what then remains is what always is, which is our real nature, what we actually are.
Okay.
So Bhagavan's teachings are, they're all very, very practical. They're very simple and very practical. And this is the important thing to understand. Attending to anything else, anything other than ourselves, is nourishing and sustaining ego. In order to eradicate ego, we need to turn our attention away from all other things, back towards ourselves. And merely withdrawing our attention from other things is also not sufficient. It's necessary, but it's not sufficient. Because every day when we fall asleep, we are able to withdraw our attention from all other things. But the result is a temporary state, a state of manolaya, temporary dissolution of mind. In order to bring about the permanent dissolution of the mind, we need to see what we actually are. We need to experience ourselves as we actually are. That is, we as ego need to see what we actually are. As soon as we as ego see what we actually are, we cease to be ego and remain as we actually are.
So should one enjoy the woods and the streams and the birds, or not, do you think?
So long as you're looking outwards, we do enjoy these things. That is in our view, the things we like, we consider to be beautiful. The things we dislike, we consider to be ugly. So we get pleasure from the things we like. Because we like them, we desire to experience them. And when we experience them, we are satisfied. We experience an iota of the infinite happiness that we actually are. The happiness we experience when we're in the woods enjoying the beauty and the bird song and all these things, that happiness seems to us to be coming from the environment. When we're in a busy environment full of pollution, we don't feel at home in such an environment, so we feel restless. But when we in the woods, listening to birdsong, it seems to us to be a more natural state, and so we enjoy it. But that is not our natural state. Our natural state is the state in which we are aware of nothing other than ourselves. That alone is our natural state. So nothing short of that will satisfy us. We may enjoy being in the woods, no harm in enjoying being in the woods, but we shouldn't take that to be real happiness. That is a fleeting iota of happiness, of the infinite and eternal happiness that we actually are. So slowly, our aim is to wean our mind off its tasting going outwards to experience anything.
Okay. One question that came up from somebody was that when they play the guitar, or you could say any musical instrument,
yes,
who is the one making the music? Is it God? Is it the person? Is it the dreamer?
Rather than worrying about who makes the music, who is experiencing it?
So that would be God.
If you find out who is experiencing it, you will find out who is making it. Because according to Bhagavan, nothing exists independent of our perception of it. In a dream, if you hear beautiful music, whether you are playing the instrument or someone else is playing the instrument, it seems that beauty is something outside you. It's something coming from somewhere other than you. But as soon as you wake up, you recognize that beautiful music was only a fabrication of your own mind. It didn't exist independent of your mind. So that beautiful music or beautiful scenery or whatever we see and experience in a dream is created by our perception of it. It has not the slightest existence independent of our perception of it. Likewise, according to Bhagavan, this our present state is just a dream. So whatever we experience in this dream, it is created by us, by our perceiving it, it is created. So if you play the guitar, you are the creator of the guitar music. If you listen to someone else playing the guitar, you are the creator of that guitar music. You are the creator of everything. That means not you as you actually are. As you actually are, you don't do anything. You just are as you are. But you as ego are responsible for the creation of all this.
All right. Thank you. And the other question that came up is, for those of us who are attracted to Ramana, above, let's say, someone like Yogananda or any other guru or teacher, is that specifically a calling from Ramana? How does that work?
Yes, that is, there are many spirituality, that is, we are all on a spiritual journey. From the moment we first rose as ego, whenever that was, which is a time we can never find, till the time when this ego is eradicated, we're all on a spiritual journey. Even the worst sinners, the people who do the worst actions, they're all on a spiritual journey. They may not recognize it, but we are all seeking one thing and one thing alone. We're all seeking happiness. Whatever else we seem to be seeking, we seek it because we think it will make us happy. So we are all seeking happiness, and happiness is our real nature. So we are all seeking what is real. The problem is we're seeking it in the wrong place. So we're on a spiritual journey, and that spiritual journey begins from a time when we first rise as ego, when we want everything for ourselves. That is, only I matter type of attitude. As we progress in the spiritual path, slowly, we become less self-centered. Our identification spread from just being, it's not just me, there's also my family, my religion, my country. So we identify ourselves with these things. So we become less concerned just about this person. We become concerned about other people because we identify those other people as ours, our family, our country, our fellow people of our religion. That it's all identification, but slowly, we become less centered on the person we seem to be. And as we progress further in the spiritual path, we begin to well, when we go much further on the path, at first people who worship, that most religions, people are worshiping God. Even in a religion like, say, Jainism or Buddhism, where supposedly there's no God, still they go to temples, they worship something, and they're expecting to gain something. That is most religious behavior. We are doing whatever we are doing, going to a church, going to a mosque, going to a temple, or whatever, praying to God or Buddha or whatever we say. We are doing it for what we can gain out of it. That is, God is a means to an end. I want a comfortable life. I want my family to be taken care of. And after I die, because I know one day I'm going to die, I want good things even after I die. So I want to go to heaven after I die. So I pray to God, and I think God, if I pray to God and if I try to live a good life, then God will reward me with all these things that I want. So that's what's called kamyata. That is, we are seeking to gain something from God. So at that stage, we don't have love for God for the sake of God. We have love for God for the sake of what we can get from God. But as we progress further in the path, we begin to, our mind is gradually purified, and then we begin to, we are able to recognize more clearly that that God is giving us all these things that we want, greater than what He gives us. The giver must be greater than the gifts. So we begin to love God for the sake of God. No, God, I don't want to ask anything more from you. You know, you have been giving me all I want till now. Now I recognize that you are greater than all these things I ask. So all I want is you alone. If you're giving me all these things that make me happy, you must be the source of this happiness. So I want you, I want nothing other than you. So when we develop love for God for the sake of God, then how can we express our love for God? The greatest love is to give ourselves. So we then come to the path of surrender. We want to give ourselves to God. So how do we surrender ourselves to God? First, we recognize that what stands between us and God. First, we recognize our will. That is, God knows what is best for us, but we've got so many desires, so many likes and dislikes. So whatever happens must be happening because God is all knowing, all loving, and all powerful. Whatever happens, because He's all knowing, nothing can happen without His knowledge. Because He's all powerful, nothing can happen without His consent. And because He's all loving, nothing can happen that is not good for all concerned. So if we don't like anything that happens to us, we are going against the will of God. We are not accepting the will of God. So then we understand, my own likes and dislikes, desires and attachments are standing between me and God. So the path of surrender begins with us trying to surrender our will to the will of God. Oh Lord, not my will, your will. Your will alone is my will. I don't want anything except what you want from me. Whatever you want from me, I'm happy with that. That is how the path of surrender starts. But as we go deeper in this path of surrender, we begin to recognize, so long as we experience ourselves as something separate from God, we inevitably have, to a greater or lesser extent, likes, dislikes, desires, and attachments, and so on. We cannot free ourselves from these so long as we remain separate from God. So it's not, we can surrender our will to God to a certain extent, but we cannot surrender it entirely until we surrender ourselves. So how can we surrender ourselves? What is this I that rises between me and God, rises separating me from God? Then we turn within to investigate this I. That is when surrender becomes complete. Surrender cannot be completed without self-investigation, but it inevitably leads to self-investigation. So why I sort of drew this sketch picture of the spiritual path from beginning to end is we are all at different stages on this spiritual path. What, according to the stage we are at on the spiritual path, we will be attracted to different things. Some people who still have a very strong sense of doership, they're attracted to yoga, because yoga, you're given things to do. You have to do this pranayama, do this meditation. And if you do these, you'll get certain results. You'll get certain experiences. You'll experience samadhi. You do something and you get rewards. That suits certain people. Other people are more drawn to the path of bhakti. Yeah, they recognize their own powerlessness, and they want to depend on God. So they begin praying to God. You give me everything I want. So, but according to the maturity of our mind, we're attracted to different types of paths and also to different types of gurus. Bhagavan has taught us, what Bhagavan has taught us is the ultimate. It's the very deepest form of spirituality. So if we're attracted to Bhagavan, that means we are ready for his path. There will never be a time when all people are attracted to Bhagavan. In fact, many of the people who are attracted to Bhagavan are not attracted to him for his teachings. That is, particularly in India, many people, they take Bhagavan to be a god. And they believe that if you pray to, like any other god, if you pray, he will take care of you, he'll protect you, he'll do all that you want him to do, and he'll save you from all the troubles of life and everything. Many people who consider themselves to be devotees to Bhagavan, their devotion is still kamyata devotion. But if we are attracted to not just to Bhagavan, I mean, Bhagavan has an appeal to so many people. People who aren't attracted to his teachings are nevertheless attracted to him, because there is something irresistibly attractive about Bhagavan. But if we are attracted to him, inevitably we will be, sooner or later, we'll be drawn to his teachings, because why he appeared in this world, he appeared only to give these teachings to turn us back within. So, but if we're attracted to his teachings, that means we're ready for his teachings. Other people may be attracted to other teachings. As you say, some people may be attracted to Yogananda. That is suitable for them at their stage of spiritual development. But for some reason, somehow we've been attracted to Bhagavan. This is whether we are worthy of it or not is another matter, but somehow we've been attracted. Sadhu Om used to say something so that we don't get egotistical. Oh, I've been attracted to Bhagavan. This is the highest spiritual path. Therefore, I must be a very mature soul. So that we don't give room for such egotism, Sadhu Om said a very nice thing. Bhagavan is the greatest doctor in the world, the greatest spiritual doctor. If you go to the surgery of the greatest doctor, what type of patients will you find there? You won't find patients with cough and cold and all minor ailments. You'll find only patients who have diseases that no other doctor can cure. They only will go to the greatest doctor. So what qualifies us to come to Bhagavan's path is that we are hopeless cases. We are unfit for any other spiritual path. So Bhagavan has brought us and decided, okay, I have to take responsibility for this one myself. I can't pawn it off to any of these other lesser gurus. I have to do this myself. So that is a good attitude to take, rather than getting proud because, oh, I've come to Bhagavan's path. This is the highest of all paths. Therefore, I must be a very mature. If we are honest with ourselves, if we are really following Bhagavan's path, we alone will know how immature we are. In the eyes of others, we may seem to be very spiritual, very mature, anything, but we alone know all the dirt that is still inside us. Dirt in the form of strong Vishaya vasanas.
Okay. Well,
Does
thank you.
does that adequately answer your question?
Oh, yes. And then some. Um, those are the only questions that had come.
Right.
So I think we covered a lot,
Yes.
and as they say in ajata world, and nothing, all at the
Yes.
same time.
In what we call everything is nothing. What we call nothing is everything in the sense of the only thing. The only thing that actually exists is I am. That is that fundamental, that satchate, that fundamental awareness of our own existence. That alone is real. Everything else is a mere appearance. It has no existence of its own. There's a very nice principle in Advaita. It's most famously expressed in the Bhagavad Gita in verse 16 of chapter 2. I don't know the verse in Sanskrit, but Bhagavan has translated it into Tamil. Basically, what it means, or at least the first half of it, there is no existence of what is there is no non-existence of what exists, and there is no existence of what doesn't exist. Bhagavan often referred to this, and Bhagavan often expressed it, the same principle, but in a slightly different way. He used to say, whatever exists at one time and not at another time doesn't exist, even when it seems to exist. This, as I say, this is a principle. Krishna mentions it in the Bhagavad Gita. It's also a principle that is mentioned by Gaudapada in the Mandukya Karika, and I think it's mentioned in many places. But this is a very, very important principle. That is, in Advaita, we use the terms real and unreal. What do these terms mean? Real is what actually exists. Unreal is whatever seems to exist but doesn't actually exist is called unreal. That is, mithya means what seems to exist but doesn't actually exist. What actually exists is only that which always exists. We can understand this if we think about it a little deeply. If something is inherently existent, if it is intrinsically existent, it must exist always. Something that exists at one time and not at another time is not intrinsically existent. Whatever is not intrinsically existent borrows its semi-existence from something else. An analogy that is sometimes given for this, if you take, for example, a hot potato, is a hot potato intrinsically hot? No, it's not, because the normal state of a potato, it's cold. So it's not intrinsically hot, so it borrowed its heat from something else. Where did it borrow its heat from? It borrowed its heat from the boiling water. So is that intrinsically hot? No, it's not. It borrows its heat from the pan. So is the pan intrinsically hot? No, it's not, because usually the pan will be cold. It borrows its heat from the fire. Is the fire intrinsically hot? Yes, it is. So the heat of the pan and the heat of the water and the heat of the potato are all borrowed. The potato borrows its heat from the water, water from the pan, and pan from the fire. That's just an analogy, because that's talking about a property. Existence obviously isn't a property, but we can, using this analogy, we can understand all things that appear at one time and disappear at another time. When they appear, they seem to exist. But they don't exist, they don't actually exist, because they don't always exist. Only what always exists actually exists. So anything that appears borrows its existence from something else, because it's not intrinsically existent, so it must borrow its existence from everything else. All phenomena all names and forms, or whatever we call it, they all borrow their existence from ego, from ourself as ego. Because why do they borrow their existence from us? Because they appear only in the view of ourself as ego. The ego, is ego intrinsically existent? No, it's not. If it was intrinsically existent, it would exist even in sleep, but it doesn't exist in sleep. So ego is not intrinsically existent. Where does it borrow its existence from? It borrows its existence from Sat-Chit. Sat-Chit is that fundamental awareness I am. Because of that element of I am, that ego is a mixture of that fundamental awareness I am and adjuncts. The fundamental awareness I am is real. The adjuncts are unreal. The adjuncts seem real only in the view of ego. So ego is borrowing its existence from that. All other things borrow their existence from ego. Ego borrows its existence from Sat-Chit. So what actually exists is only Sat-Chit. So that's why this is such an important principle, because if we understand this, whatever appears and disappears cannot be real. It cannot be real. Though it seems to be real, though it seems to exist, it doesn't actually exist. So what actually exists is only I am. Everything else seems to exist only in the view of ourselves as ego. And we seem to be ego only so long as we're looking at other things, so long as other things seem to exist. That is all. The cause for the appearance of all other things is our rising as ego. But we cannot rise as ego without creating this appearance of other things. So though ego and phenomena are mutually dependent, the cause for the appearance of phenomena is ego. So ego is the root. So ego is the only problem we face. Ultimately, can all boils down to our rising as ego. Once we rise as ego, then we have likes and dislikes, and we've got Vishaya Vasanas and everything. Without our rising as ego, there cannot be any Vishaya Vasana. So the root problem is ego. That's why Bhagavan focused his teachings on dealing with this root problem. And what is the nature of ego? Ego is a false awareness of ourself. It's awareness of ourself as something other than what we actually are. It's awareness of ourself as a form. And we're aware of other forms only when we're aware of a form as ourself. So long as we attend to anything other than ourselves, we are nourishing and sustaining both the appearance of other things and the appearance of ourself as ego. In order to eradicate ego, we as ego need to cease attending to anything else. We need to attend only to ourselves. Attending to ourselves means not attending to the whole package, I am this body, because the body is not what we actually are. We need to attend just to the I am portion. So only by clinging to I am can we free ourselves from ego, and only by freeing ourselves from ego can we free ourselves from everything else. So these philosophical principles that are taught in Advaita, not all of them, because there are a lot of unnecessary things that are taught in Advaita, but these are the very fundamental principles. They are, if we understand them correctly, they're extremely practical. So what we need to do is to stop attending to anything that appears and disappears, to cling only to that, to attend only to that which never appears or disappears, which is always shining. That is only I am. Why I say this, or part of the reason why I say this, it ties in with your original question, or with the answer that I gave to your original question about whatever appears and disappears is not real. We need to cling only to what is real. So whether it's beauty or whatever we call it, if it has appeared, it will certainly disappear. It is not real. So we need to cling to what is real. And what is real alone actually exists. So when we experience ourselves as that, that is the state of ajata, because then we will know there never was any ego. Since there never was any ego, there never was any other thing, because all other things appear only in the view of ego. So the logical conclusion of Advaita as taught by Bhagavan is ajata. The logical conclusion of Drishti Shrishtivada is ajata, because Drishti Shrishtivada means everything that is, nothing is, there's no creation independent of our perception of it. And there's obviously no, so nothing perceived exists independent of our perceiving. And the perceiving cannot exist independent of the perceiver. So all comes back to ego. And ego is nothing but a false awareness of ourselves. So if we investigate ourselves, we thereby find that there's no such thing as ego, therefore there's nothing else. Therefore, ajata alone is the eternal truth. That's why he said, this is the ultimate truth. This is the point to which all Advaita teachings, this is what all Advaita teachings are ultimately pointing to. And Bhagavan has tied together the philosophy, the core principles of the philosophy with the practice by pointing out that the root problem is ourself as ego. So it's only by investigating ourselves that we can get rid of all these problems.
Okay.
I hope that was useful.
Yes, I think I've come to the conclusion of just go in the woods, enjoy the birds singing, and look at it as a movie picture show, and that's it. I think it's easy that way.
But who is looking?
Well, I'm not on exist, so it doesn't matter who's looking because nothing exists. But I think
but you don't exist as Kevin, but you seem to exist as Kevin.
But Kevin doesn't exist, right?
Yes, but it's fine to say he doesn't exist, but so long as he seems to exist, he brings all sorts of problems with him. The very existence of Kevin is a problem, because now you are aware of yourself as I am Kevin, but you also know very well Kevin is a temporary appearance. He's here today, he'll be gone tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know this bodily life is such a fleeting thing. Now we are in the later stages of our life. How quickly our life has passed by. When we are young, when we're in our teens or 20s, life seems to stretch many years ahead. But how quickly those years pass. So how long can we enjoy the woods and the birds singing and everything? It may be beautiful, but it's temporary. It's just a dream. And like every dream, it will pass. So let us cling to what is real. If we want eternal happiness, if we're satisfied with the temporary things, fine. The choice is ours.
All right. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, right. Thank you.